Hello everyone, my name is Konstantinos. Today I'm going to be your host on this webinar. I'm very happy that you're all here and thank you much for joining us. Also, I would like to thank the speakers for being part of this webinar. And today we're going to discuss and we're going to present to you the environmental credits for seaweed aquaculture and marine permaculture, which is a webinar based on the study of EU4Algae that we're currently preparing. We have a very nice agenda, very packed with many things. First of all, we're going to do a who is in the room Slido, where we're going to ask you questions about your expertise, what you're doing in this webinar, what's your main focus. Then Maris Tulgis from DJ Mari is going to take over, and he's going to present the Nature Credit Roadmap. Then Brian representing the Japan Blue Economy Association, and Xiu representing the Kelp Forest Foundation. We'll talk about blue carbon and seaweed aquaculture. Then Yona Kota from University of Tartu will present nutrient uptake and macroalgae. And then Leah from ABBA will present carbon modeling. And then it's going to go back to me, who then I'm going to have some time to present some early findings from the study we're currently running. And then it's going to be a short, but I think very dynamic breakout room session where we're going to split you into different rooms, two different topics and 6 different rooms in regards to carbon credits, energy credits, and the potential inclusion of macroalgae on them. And then, of course, it's going to be a breakout session, a breakout summary session. And before we start, I would like also to give you small housekeeping rules. I would like to let you know that during this webinar, there's not going to be a Q&A session just because of the lack of time. However, we're going to share with you a Slido in which you can actually add your questions, and then we're going to collect them and give them to the speakers to reply to your questions. And also, I would like to let you know that this meeting is getting recorded. And yeah, and then I guess we can start. So the first thing I would like to let you know, as I told you before, this meeting is not going to have a Q&A session. So in case you want to make any comments, please use the Slido and add your comments there, add the name of the speaker you're interested to reply and your topic on conversation. We're going to select all these comments and then we're going to give to the speakers and then collect your answers. So I think we're ready to proceed to the first Slido, which is actually about who is in the room. So I would like all of you to just grab your phones and scan the QR code and reply to the Slido, and then I'm gonna share it as well. Can somebody confirm that you can see the Slido screen?
No, we cannot see your screen still, Konstantinos. You are not sharing me.
In general?
I can see the screen. I just see
Okay.
the QR code.
I can see it too.
Perfect. So then that's great. So please, scan the QR code, and then I'm going to start. So the first question is, which best describes your professional field? Are you working in public authority, policy, industry, consultant, other NGO? What is your field of work? Perfect. I see already 50 people almost have replied, so I'm going to give it a bit of time for the rest. 58. Okay, so I see a lot of research here, which is very interesting and exciting because we have a lot of research also results. So I'm very curious to know about your opinions about what we do. And then I'm going to proceed to the second question. Which topic are the most interesting for you about today? Is it carbon credits, nature credits? Are you not sure? Is it both? What you're actually more interested to hear and see today? I see a bit of more interest. Oh, no. I see carbon and nutrients are very similar. And of course, everybody wants to know a bit of both. So that's very interesting because we're going to discuss about both carbon and nature. So this is nice to see. And then I'm going to go to the third question. How involved are you in this topic today? How much do you know about nature and carbon credits? Do you know a bit? Are you just aware of it? Are you an expert, or you just know it well, or maybe you don't know it a lot? I see. I just know a little, most of it, and few experts also are here with us, so that's also very nice to have you here. And a lot of I'm aware of it. And then I would like also to ask you, how familiar are you with macroalgae in general? Not familiar, a little familiar, expert, or you just have good knowledge? Awesome. I see a lot of good knowledge and a lot of people having knowledge about macroalgae here, which is also very nice because the topic is very much related to it. Great. So that was the get to know each other. It was great to see what kind of interest you have here. And then I'm gonna share again my screen to go back to the slides. And now I would like to invite the first speaker, Maris Toulis from TG Mare, who's going to discuss and talk and present to you about the Nature Credit Roadmap, feedback, and next step. So Maris, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Konstantinos. Yeah, you can go to the, and good morning, everyone. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, these slides were kindly provided by my colleagues of DG Environment, who are in charge of the nature credits developments across the Commission. So I will try to quickly go through them and provide you the picture as it stands now. So this Nature Credits Roadmap is a Commission communication that was adopted in July 2025. And here you see on the right, you see different materials. You can come to them and refer back. But the basic idea is that this nature credits communication, or I would say EU policy, it aims to provide the economic and business case for nature positive action. And we're developing these nature credits. There are a couple of strategic directions that you will see further. Next, I don't see the whole slides, but okay, yeah. So the first slide here, why this is finance, because finance is exactly the core point of the nature credits. And as you see here, so we are having the gap of more than 37 billion euro of financing the biodiversity needs, and globally this reaches even 700 billion. So it says that we don't have enough funding for the biodiversity funds, and therefore we need to find the additional sources of funding here, and this is where the EU tries to act both internally within the EU, but also externally, like you see on the right, the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, where our colleagues in an international field also work together with relevant counterparts there. Next slide. I'm running through, but you could refer to them later. So this is completely fresh. I just learned this morning. I would invite you also to consider during the EU Green Week is an annual DG Environment event that will happen 3rd to 4th June in Brussels. It will have a focus on investing in nature positive economy. So, and Invest in Nature is a brand new EU event, bringing together investors with startups, projects, and SMEs. And you will see that this will be structured around four specific topics. It's organized together with the EU Blue Invest. And I would invite you, to look into this. This is linked to finance. Next. Yeah, what is important, of course, there is a demand for nature credits, and there is a need for additional funds to cover the biodiversity recovery needs. But this needs to be aligned. Supply and demand needs to be aligned. And to do that, I will say this in a moment, there is a specific research, a specific study is envisaged by DG Environment, because as you see, this is fundamental for the European SMEs. 72% of EU companies in the Euro area are highly dependent from nature. And if this is degraded, then it impacts these businesses. And and therefore, this study will look on really how to align these. What is available, what is supply, and what is the demand. Both parts are there, but they are not really aligned yet in the current policies, policy frameworks. Next. What are actually nature credits? So, if we can say that nature credits turn improvements in biodiversity, like for instance, restoring ecosystems, creating more wildlife, into certified results that companies or organizations can buy as proof that real gains for nature have been achieved, helping to finance further restoration and regeneration. Of course, we need to be credible in what and how we act, and therefore there are certain blocks of information and actions to be achieved. So there should be proofs that this action or project is nature positive. So there should be verified outcomes. They should be measurable, and they should be adapted to the real conditions, independently assessed, and so on. They should be science-based. They should have high integrity. A new financial tools will be a new financial tool to finance the additional biodiversity activities within the EU. So, and they need to be aligned with other EU policies. So I will say in a moment, and then of course certification and credits, they will be assessed as specific tools. Important to outline that this is not a commodification of nature, but it is a framework to recognize, verify, and channel investments into the nature positive actions. Next slide. So challenges, I would not touch upon them, but just in big lines, we need that the challenges are how exactly to measure these nature positive outcomes. We are not maybe very, very good at that yet. That we need to ensure integrity, trust, and safeguards, and we need to build on investable pipelines. We need to develop demand and supply, and we need to be consistent and avoid any conflicts. Next one. So in the current EU policy landscape, we have several policies and actions, and some of these are mentioned here. So nature restoration regulation is purely relevant here. Marine Strategy Framework Directive is also in a line connected with these nature credits developments. And also the European Ocean Pact has certain notions on linking these nature credits into the overall framework of the EU ocean policies. So and then it's important, of course, positioning the nature credits with the nature positive outcomes. And also it should be complementary with current regulatory framework, current public funding, but not a substitute. So we are speaking about additionality, including additionality of funds. Next. So in marine environment, there are several developments here. As you can see, I will not go through all of them. I already mentioned MSFD, Marine Strategy Framework Directive, Water Framework Directive. Of course, marine and coastal ecosystems are purely in the scope here, and we have a big potential of seaweed farming being directly linked to the nature credit developments. You can see on the right that European Investment Bank had looked at this and provided a great report there. So there is also DG Environment have a dedicated page on marine environment, and you could get more information there. And next, I'm running shortly out of time. So here we have first experience. I'm really glad to see that Brian is here, who will report about the Japan's case, which is best in the world. And then there are a lot of other aspects under the development already. And next. Yeah, how to engage. Here you see the various ways how the stakeholders could engage in developing these and implementing the nature credit systems. One thing that is on the top in the middle is, for instance, the expert group on nature credits that has been established. I would like to really point out to the fact that this application for this expert group is continuously open for the participants for applications, and also to point out that there are nearly no blue related companies or stakeholders apply. There are only two that are slightly related, but I would really invite the relevant stakeholders to explore this opportunity and look into these options. So, but then you see, yeah, the various other work streams where you can engage. Next. I think that's, yeah, okay. Here is the roadmap. I mentioned a couple of things we are which I mentioned already, but I'm at the end of my 10 minutes, so I think I think I stop here. I think it's the last slide. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Maris, a lot for this presentation. It has been very helpful and useful to actually see the background of EU, and the roadmap is very, very important for nature credits, like planning and, the future. So now I would like also to invite Brian and Xu to take over. I know that you would like to share your screens, so I'm going to stop sharing. So I'm going to allow you to share now.
Can you see my slides?
1 second.
Perfect. Okay,
Yes.
given the limited time, hello everyone. Brian Tsuyoshi Takeda, CEO and founder of Restora, and also the Secretariat of International Affairs for the Japan Blue Economy Association. So today, with the limited time I have, I'm going to very briefly introduce the JBE and the J Blue credits, and then I'll pass the floor to Chu, who can walk through a case of how the Japanese recognize the carbon and biodiversity benefits from seaweed cultivation. So very quickly, the JBE, or the Japan Blue Economy Association, is a Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism ministry approved independent research cooperative. So that's a really complicated way of saying that this is a top-down state appointed entity that is responsible for certifying and accreditizing the blue credits. So this is a state initiative that is set up as an independent research cooperative. This is what the credit looks like. It's a nice little piece of paper, but it carries a lot more weight than it looks. It is, from the best of my knowledge, the world's first state-sponsored voluntary carbon and nature credit hybrid, which allows the ecosystem services of both wild and farm seedweeds to be reflected in the credit. The credit acts like a plate at a buffet table, where the carbon calculation is effectively the foundational plate. Now, carbon does not really represent the significant value when it comes to farmed or cultured seaweeds, but it is the foundation and it is the science that everything's built upon. We then apply the best available science that we have to then stack on other ecosystem services values that are inherently generated from a restoration effort in the sea. So including biodiversity, community benefits, nutrient absorption, wave attenuation, whatever you can think of that can be quantified, you pile on top of that plate using the best available science and submit. The J Blue credits are currently trading at significantly higher prices than other credits around the world. It's approximately 10 to 15 times higher than most other credits on the planet. And this is really reflecting the additional ecosystem services benefits. In Japan, we already have a state-backed J credit system, which is for terrestrial forests. These sell for around $30 to $40 a ton. So the corporates that are buying these credits are taking that extra step to pay 10x, 15x, despite having alternatives, because they want to support the initiative and to create the dynamism that this credit system allows. So how are they going to do it? Well, the typical ecosystems that are certified by the J Blue credits are seagrass meadows, wild kelp forests, kelp farming activities, tidal flats, mangrove forests now. Yeah, and but there's another little surprise to this. Japan is also now working on a blue compliance credit. So beyond the voluntary space, they're now moving into the compliance space with blue credits, and there are effectively two major solutions that they believe are the long-term potential. One is large-scale seaweed cultivation, not farming, but cultivation. And the other is large-scale ocean alkalinity enhancement. So those seems to be the two most cost-effective solutions that can be done on the continental shelf. That is still work in progress, but it is heading in that direction. So with that said, I'm now going to pass the floor to Chu, and she can walk through the case for seaweed farming.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Yeah, I'm Chu from the Kelp Forest Foundation, and we've been focusing on this credit system as one of the best practices that are out there. So let me just walk you through, what the JBE system enables, but also how it would work if you were a seaweed farmer wanting to apply for this credit system. So just briefly, the gap that it bridges is that you have coastal communities on one hand and corporates on the other hand. And coastal communities have access to the coast, but also the desire to restore ecosystems, mainly because obviously coastal communities are directly impacted by the health of their local ecosystem. But in order to do so, they need scalable technologies or funding. And on the other hand, you have corporates that have this. They have funding, technologies, and also obviously the willingness to help and support local ecosystems, but they do not have the access to the coastline or, full understanding of the local context and the hands to actually, put things to action or actually intervene locally. So the JBE credit system is a really good place that facilitates this exchange by building a credible market and providing a lot of scientific guidance to allow coastal communities to quantify their impact and for corporates to actually channel funding towards these coastal communities to improve their local ecosystem or to have additional funding for seaweed farming that ultimately has carbon and biodiversity benefits. Yes. So quickly how it works, you will have your marine ecosystem like a seagrass meadow or a seaweed farm. And then we'll talk about project activity. This is actually the intervention that increases removal. So this could be seaweed restoration, but also seaweed farming. And so you have to actually measure through an annual survey that your activity has increased carbon removal above the baseline, meaning the previous situation. And by quantifying the difference, you will be able to prove that carbon has been carbon has been sequestered. And so through an appointed validation and verification body, a VVB is an independent third party that validates the data that is submitted to the system. And then once this is approved, the Japan Blue Economy Association will certify the credit and then put it on a marketplace where the credit buyer can step in and purchase the credits. And now this is also an important note. Once the carbon credit has been purchased, it has to be filed for retirement. So this carbon credit does not stay on the market or can be traded as a commodity. It stays directly linked to the local ecosystem, and it allows the corporate buyer to actually put it on their balance sheet or their reports so that it stays there and doesn't, it actually keeps its value. So to look at, and I think there's a lot of, there has been a lot of challenge in the seaweed space of quantifying CO2 sequestration. And just to quickly walk you through the high level, structure that is applied in the JBE methodology. So there's a lot on this slide, but the general premise is that on the left hand, within the main equation, you have to multiply the area against a removal coefficient. And there are several options given in the methodology to do so, but generally, this structure is like this: area times removal coefficient. And so looking at the colors of the blocks, so each row would be a type of formula that you would be able to apply depending on the type of ecosystem you're looking at or the type of monitoring that is available to you. So for a seaweed farm, we're looking at the bottom two rows as an option. And just to quickly go through it, the area is important because you need to assess the size of your ecosystem or your project activity. And then we need to move from the area to the actual biomass that is available in this ecosystem or in this activity, and then multiply it by a fraction. And that fraction is really important because the fraction describes how much carbon is eventually sequestered longer term based on the biomass available. And the white blocks describe values that are derived from literature. So just to dive another level, a little bit deeper into the details. So when we're looking at area, Brian, if you can go to the next slide. There are several ways that the methodology allows you to determine the area, and the area needs to be determined based on a couple of things. You need to obviously submit the size of the area that you're looking at, so you have to do the mapping, but you also need to actually submit the location of your activity so there's no overlap with other activities. And then it's important that you identify the ecosystem type. So actually submit and measure and prove that you're looking at a certain species of seaweed, for example, or that you're not, accidentally looking at seagrass. And what else is important is that you're assessing the coverage and the density of your area so that we understand how much biomass is in there. So there are several ways to do that, but we can move into the next slide to actually see how it would look for a seaweed farm. So for a seaweed farm, it works like this. You have to measure the size of your farm, so that can be done by multiplying your rope length with the average weight of each rope per meter, for example. And then, this is very detailed, but you go from the wet weight of your biomass to the dry weight. And then there's several factors that are available from literature and reported in the application guide that you can apply from here. And these literature values are established through extensive research that has been done by the JBE and the relevant scientists. And so the key here is to understand that you need the seaweed, farmer or the community that is applying for this credits will be able to go from the biomass that is observed to applying the fractions that are available from literature and from previous assessments to get to that number that ensures that the carbon that is eventually moved to longer term sequestration pools, like deeper in the ocean or in deeper sediments where they are staying there for longer periods of time. And so I won't dive too much into these factors, but the key here is that these values are provided in the application guide. So it makes it easy for a seaweed farmer to actually, submit and quantify their carbon sequestration. And then at the end, the CO2 emissions from the project activity need to be subtracted. So, for example, the fuel use to install and maintain the material, but also installation of the farm material. So that gives you the final number. So starting from, the potential carbon sequestered, subtracting the emissions associated with your activities, and then that gives you that number that you can then submit for carbon credits. And so just to give you a quick peek into what it looks like in the methodology guide, for example, here, this is a summary of available coefficients. So these are the fractions I was talking about that are provided based on the type of seaweed, for example, that you're looking at, or cultivated beds that you can see in the bottom. So you can immediately apply these literature-derived values to your seaweed farm. We're really short on time, so this is kind of the level of detail that I'm sharing today. But there's a lot more translation and case studies coming out. You can keep track on KFF's page. We'll be sharing more case studies in depth. And Brian and I will also be presenting at Seaweed in Sweden to have a bit more time to walk you through a case study. And for any questions, feel free to send us an email or send us a message on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this presentation. It has been very insightful. And yes, if we had more time, I would love also to hear more in detail. So thank you so much for that. And now I would like to invite Yone Kota to present. I'm going to share my screen, and then you can also guide us through your slides. So Yone, the floor is yours.
So hello, good morning to everyone. Perhaps also good afternoon or good evening, depends in a time zones you are currently located. So this talk is mostly about seaweeds and nutrient uptake. Next slide, please. Yeah, next. So as you are well aware, seaweeds require light and carbon dioxide in order to produce a biomass. But in addition, they also need a nitrogen and phosphorus that makes them a ideal asset for carbon and nutrient uptake. So next slide, please. And this can be happening in multiple ways. So it's you have a natural habitats, and natural habitats can be like drifting seaweed communities, or it could be like attached forms of seaweeds like a kelp forest. And then they are producing a biomass, and the biomass includes nutrients. But in addition, as it was told also in earlier lecture, so some of the biomass goes to be deposited somewhere in the sediments elsewhere, that can be considered as a captured nutrients. Next slide, please. And then you have also opportunity of a harvest seaweeds in nature, and you're obviously aware of lots of interesting harvest practices around the world, but this is a very unique. It's the only one in the Baltic Sea. So where we have the red algal kind of forest, floating forest. That's a Furzellaria, and this is commercially harvested, and then they're producing interesting compounds top of it. And then, of course, these sorts of nutrient capture is you have to be in a wise way, a sustainable way. So you have to manage your stock in a very good way to keep the community in a healthy state, that this can be carried on for decades and more. Next, please. And then very interesting possibility of nutrient capture is also the seaweed farming, and this is a emerging thing, so to say, at least in Europe. It's very prominent in Asia, but in Europe we are still lagging behind. And when we are zooming in the Baltic, so I'm sure in Europe, so I'm sure you all know about the Sakharina farms and similar in the North Sea. But in the Baltic Sea we have very little of it, and this is a very unique offshore seaweed farm installed only last year. And then, of course, as the salinity is very low, so we can't cultivate those species and varieties that are in more salty waters. So we have to use our own technologies and our own varieties. And this is a drifting bladderwrack that's going to cultivate it. So next slide, please. So why nutrient uptake matters? So seaweed deliver a water quality service, and this is especially relevant in eutrophic coastal ecosystem, where you have a very many negative symptoms of eutrophication, including a loss of biodiversity, the collapse of a healthy ecosystems and associated ecosystem services, and then and many more. So they basically remove dissolved nitrogen and phosphorus, and then they're producing also harvestable biomass. And if you go to a nearshore or semi-sheltered bays, so this nutrient uptake can be very significant, and very often it's the most relevant local go benefit when it comes to restoration. And thereby seaweeds support eutrophication mitigation and water quality improvement. Importantly, this nutrient uptake should be framed as a measurable ecosystem outcome rather than a side effect, and this is not done so far so prominently. So we have a few initiatives here and there, and in order to support this, so we have to have a nice nice scientific data and evidence on this. And on the right side, you have the modeled values of a potential seaweed farm within a Baltic Sea, so how much it can capture nutrients in different parts of the sea. Next slide, please. So what we already know. So we know that the production models can produce as a growth and tissue nutrient contents, and then this can be used to predict farm scale nutrient removal estimates. And in many ecosystems and regions, our results suggest that the nutrients are not really limiting algal growth when it comes to seaweed farming. So maybe the only exception is the Mediterranean Sea, where offshore areas at least are oligotrophic. So, but nevertheless, location and production conditions still matter. And this is why you need some sort of digital tools that convert the available scientific information into a tangible and verified maps or statistics. And then we developed this ODSS portal that translates monitoring and modeling into a site selection and farm planning support tools for different end users. And this is actually a very good starting point for any future verification and crediting conversations. But this tool is currently working only for the Baltic and North Seas. But of course, we're interested to expand it further. So next, please. So macroalgae are promising, but we still have a low sort of awareness or readiness of these carbon nutrient credits. And the problem is that the only small share of carbon is likely stored in nutrients, and the knowledge is not that prominent. So we do not know too much about it. We know little. That's a good starting point. And also key challenges remained about monitoring, reporting, verification. So, and then as we already heard this morning, so it's we are at the very early stage of this EU credit framework. So those are not yet nicely incorporated in the frameworks. So near-term value lies more in co-benefits and restoration than a standalone sequestration credits. And if you want to read more about these details, then there is a recently published study from CINEA where a lot more can be found, like 200-300 pages and more about all this background information that cannot be fit within this 10 minutes talk. So next slide, please. So if nutrient credits are not the near-term route, so what can be? And then, so I suggest that there might be like working together with many other benefits. So first, of course, so we are looking at water quality outcomes. So we quantify nitrogen and phosphorus uptake. So we quantify avoided eutrophication pressure and the site level relevance for semi-sheltered bays. Then, of course, we need to quantify everything that comes to habitat and biodiversity co-benefits. So basically, we add to a framework local ecological benefits, habitat structure, nursery function, reduced coastal pressure, and so on. And then we package it into a bundle of restoration, nature, finance narratives instead of waiting for a pure nutrient credit market. So that can be the most rewarding outcome. Next slide, please. So this is where we are working currently. So we are trying to link site suitability, production, nutrient content models to farm scale nutrient removal estimates. Then we use and develop these ODSS style tools to move from can we grow it here to what ecosystem outcome can we verify here. And then we're testing how nutrient uptake, water quality, habitat co-benefits would be reported in a credible nature finance framework. So a take-home message. Seaweeds provide a measurable nutrient uptake, and this is the good news. And then what we need to work much more is carbon nutrient credit pathways, so to make it much more mature. And then like a near-term focus could be what would be the minimal credible evidence package look like for nutrient uptake outcome. And with this, I have 10 seconds left. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Joanna. That was perfect timing. So thank you so much for that. And for your presentation, of course, it has been very insightful. And also it's been a pleasure working with you. So I would like now to invite on the stage Leah from EAPA. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to give you the time to share your screen as well.
Yeah, thanks, Konstantinos. Just put it full screen. Okay, so I think let's go. So my name is Leah. I'm a full-time researcher at ETH Zurich working on LCA applied to algae systems, but I'm also innovation manager at the European Algae Biomass Station, where I have the pleasure to coordinate the LCA task force. And today I'm going to present a little bit on our work on carbon modeling in algae LCA. So we heard a lot about the need for measuring carbon uptake, but also storage.
I don't know if it's my issue, but can everybody see your screen or it's just me? Okay, so
No,
this
black screen.
No.
okay, so the screen is blank. I can also share your slides if you want to.
Let me try again. Sorry for that. It just shows really nicely, and we tried earlier as well to avoid any problem. Can you see them now, or still?
Oh, at least blank. Oh yeah, now it's here.
Okay, perfect. So sorry for this. I have no explanation for that. Okay, so let me skip a little bit. Okay, so we heard about measuring carbon uptake, but also it's important to look into storage duration and emissions. And we heard about the need for science-based evidence to ensure credibility. So today I'm going to present a little bit more about LCA as a key monitoring tool in those crediting schemes. So I think we first need to go back to the concept of life cycle of thinking, which is also the basis for life cycle assessment, in short, LCA. So on the right side, you can see just a simple life cycle for a product. And what is important to consider is all stages of the product's life, from raw material extraction to the end of life. So we consider all aspects: environmental, social, economic, and under environmental goes, of course, climate change, but also biodiversity impacts, eutrophication, etc. And the overall aim is, of course, to reduce resource use and emissions to support a better decision across the full value chain. And then it leads to the question, why is LCA important in those crediting schemes? And it's mainly because it ensures a full system perspective and credible results. It avoids burden shifting, but also allows to capture the full value chain emissions, ensure credibility and comparability, and importantly, prevents over-crediting. So in short, without a life cycle perspective, carbon credits risk being incomplete and misleading. And this is why LCA is so important. So within the EABA, we created in 2024 a dedicated task force looking only into advancing LCA for the algae sector. And now we count 24 members from 11 countries, and you can see probably some familiar logos on the right side of the slide. We're about 50% from industry, 30% from universities, and the rest from independent institutes. And we meet online monthly, but we also have many parallel events. And our main missions are first to harmonize algae LCA methodologies, so for the sector, but also to tackle important methodological and practical challenges associated with applying LCA in the algae sector. But most importantly, we're trying to align with a broader bio-based industry because we also have to learn a lot from other sectors. We have several ongoing projects. So we've already released over the past few months 2 information papers. The first one in August last year, a practical step-by-step guidance to applying LCA to algal products. And the second one, just diving deeper into standards and guidelines for algae LCAs. So they're both open source and they can be downloaded online. We are currently working on 2 more info papers that are going to come out this year. The first one, very important, on comparing algae-based products versus conventional products. And then one specific on carbon modeling on algae LCAs. So important to know that we also work on many other aspects, such as checking the quality of available data that are used to conduct LCA studies, and also, as I mentioned, to align LCA methodologies with other bio-based sectors, because we've also identified a lot of common. And we're also feeding some educational content for our platform, AlgaFlix. More about our working group on carbon modeling. It's a 6-month project that started earlier this month, and it will lead to an info paper, hopefully around September or by the end of the year for sure. We aim to really provide case studies for both macro and micro algae on how to really model carbon flows. So from uptake to storage to emission. And we also have members in our task force that are part of the Lifecycle Initiative Biogenic Carbon Project that is also hosted by the United Nations Environment Programme. So really with the perspective of aligning with the broader bio-based industry. And what we're really working on at the moment is, of course, the measurement part, accounting from carbon uptake and release, but also looking deeper into carbon storage duration. What does qualify as long-term storage, for instance? We look into biogenic carbon flows and the timing of the greenhouse gas emissions. And all this with the aim of having LC as a monitoring tool. So of course, this is only a few information. You can learn more by connecting with us. We have a brand new LinkedIn group that you can join to hear more about our progress. We also have a website. You can of course contact me per email. We meet in person every year at Algae Europe. This year is going to be in Malta. And the final news, I think it's quite important. For the first time, the EADA LCA Task Force is sharing a session on algae LCAs at the next SEDAC Europe LCA Symposium in Belgium. So if you're working on LCA applied to algae system, also looking to carbon capture and modeling, feel free to just submit an abstract and join us there. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. That has been also very insightful. So thank you for your slides. So now I'm going to share again my screen. Okay. So can you all see my screen already?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. Thank you. So now I'm going to present also, present like for a very short kind of like study snapshot of what the study we're currently working on with EU4Algae is, what's the state and what it's about. So the main idea of the study is actually to develop an overview of environmental credit markets and schemes to assess the potential inclusion of seaweed aquaculture and marine permaculture outcomes in the environmental credits, and to develop some recommendations on whether and how algae could be included in them. This study has like 3 main objectives. First of all, is to map and analyze existing carbon, nutrient, and nature credit schemes, to review monitoring frameworks, and also to make a synthesis of existing evidence on basin scale of carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus success and implications for potential seaweed uptake, and of course, to make the recommendations. So currently we have actually done the first part, which is actually the mapping of environmental credits. And when it comes to carbon credits, we have identified 45 schemes, 45 markets in total, 29 of them belonging to compliance and 16 belonging to voluntary. The analysis, of course, is way deeper than this slide. However, for the sake of this webinar at the time, I would like here to point out that based on this analysis, we found only one microalgae aquaculture relevant credit, which of course is the J blue that was presented before, and out of all of them. And also we found 3 kind of indirect methodologies that include microalgae and microalgae as well, such as the cold standard and poor earth and climate action reserve, which is allowing projects to turn seaweed or waste algae into biochar to store carbon. So we see also a bit of initiative on how to develop more methodologies in order to include directly or indirectly microalgae. But when it comes to cultivation and aquaculture, right now it's only the shade blue credit. Then after this mapping, we proceeded also to do an evaluation of the 3 different categories that we want to examine. So the compliance markets, of course, talking about mostly for EU ETS, where we found a very high reliability when it comes to the current analysis and data we have, as it's proven that they actually reduce emissions. And then when it comes to voluntary credits, unfortunately, right now we found still a low reliability. However, with the potential of increasing this reliability based on new initiatives, principles, claims, integrity codes that are trying to strengthen the transparency of these credits, together also with the new EU CRCF that can provide a stronger European benchmark for certification. However, yes, we can see in past literature that we still have the gap of overcrediting, inflating baselines, weak additionality, and the issues we had also referred in the past. However, when it comes to blue carbon credits, we see that this is an emerging market. Even though right now it's very small, it represents only 0.35% of the total voluntary carbon markets credits, and 19% of them actually has mangrove projects. However, we see an increase based on the current EU policy, based on the example from JBlue credit, based on different methodologies. So we see the potential that this is an early start that can actually merge and become stronger and more transparent. Then, based on this analysis and this mapping, we proceeded with a very, in this presentation, kind of high-level analysis of the potential of macroalgae inclusion within carbon credits, SWOT analysis, and we identified several strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, such as a strength that we have already some proof of concept with the JBlue credit, some weakness that we all know that we struggle in order to make sure about the durable sequestration and how hard it is to prove about that for macroalgae. And of course, the RMV attribution permanence are way harder to measure than the direct emission systems. When it comes to opportunities, the current policy landscape, and together also with some interest in regards with the blue carbon and macroalgae is definitely an opportunity. And of course, when it comes to threats, we assume that trust shocks, as it happened before in general carbon credit markets, together with climate risk, can be a future threat for inclusion of macroalgae in carbon credits. After that, we proceeded with nutrient credit mapping. However, the results here were not very promising. We found only 8 nutrient credits, and out of these 8, all of them are compliance, and most of them are focusing on USA and on wastewater and agriculture, and they mostly focus to support upstream catchment management and not marine removal. So because of that, we didn't take them into account further in the analysis. And then we did also a mapping for the nature credits, where we found 39 nature credit mechanisms in total, 16 of them being government-led and 23 of them being voluntary credit schemes. However, here I would like to point out a small disclaimer. I noted that there is non-direct connection with macroalgae cultivation when it comes to nature credits. However, the reason why we haven't included JBlue credits here is because we consider it in the study as more in regards to carbon, even though we know it's a stackable hybrid credit. For this analysis, we put it on the carbon. However, I have to say that, yes, it also belongs to the nature. So please have that in mind while you take under consideration this slide. And apart from that, we've seen that there is only one indirect macroalgae route, however, not in a way of nature credits, but more like in a marine stewards credit model, which the unit represents restoration work rather than a biodiversity credit. However, when it comes to nature credits in general, we see also that Plan Vivo and Vera have just developed some methodologies that includes nature credits to marine and coastal environments, which also shows the potential of this market. Then again, we did the same methodology. We developed an evaluation based on past literature, where we found out that compliance nature mechanisms are medium reliability and kind of emerging. And the reason why of that is that we see still the main issues of baseline choice, equivalence, measuring the units, weak public registers, and incomplete monitoring. However, the compliance nature credits based on past research have a better opportunity to have unitization because of the compliant context. When it comes to voluntary nature credits, again, we see a better reliability than the carbon, and the reason why is because, of course, the emerging EU policies, which can support and provide the benchmark of transparency, but also because of different past research that provide that biodiversity credits have a stronger positive outcome requirements, which is very important. And when it comes to blue nature credits, we found out that based on past research, only 15% of the projects that were reviewed have actually a marine-focused profile, which again shows that the market is quite small. And also we found out that based on past research, marine biodiversity offsets, of course, remain less common than territorial ones, and also they're widely described as more complex, which is something that I think we're all very aware here. And then again, the same methodology as to the carbons, but then we developed a SWOT analysis for the potential of inclusion of macroalgae within nature credits. And some strengths we found was that microalgae, as also was described by Yone, provides some co-benefits that fit the nature scheme logic, such as nutrient removal, habitat creation, or water filtration. Of course, the weaknesses remain the same as before, how the complexity of the outcomes, of the diversity outcomes, and also that the marine ecosystems remain underrepresented in the current nature market design. Some opportunities, as Maris presented before, also the current European roadmap and frameworks can support and provide some room for marine-specific methodologies. And then some threats can say that the premature inclusion in standard markets could lead to overclaiming. So as Jonas said before, we are still in the early start, but it's very important for us to do it properly and to take care of the science that's supported behind. And I do believe that the Blue Credit can give us a very nice idea of how they did it and maybe how we can also achieve similar results. And then I would like to discuss about some next steps that we're currently planning. First of all, we're in the state of reviewing the monitoring frameworks and also having some contact with EABA and LEA was very important for us also to review some LLCs. And then the next step will also is to estimate the carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus by each European sea basis and estimate and calculate the potential uptake from seaweed and how that can be resulted in a creditable way. And then the last step will be to deliver expert validated and actionable recommendations after having also focus groups with some experts and discussing in more detail with different actors and stakeholders that are important for such mechanisms. And here I would like also to take the time to invite you to this Slido, which is it's a secret side law, so nobody will see your contact details. However, if you are interested in getting involved with the study, and if you're an expert on this, and if you would like maybe to share your opinions or help us with the focus group in the end, I'm very interested to get your contacts and maybe filtering out who is relevant for the study and then contacting you in order to discuss further. Or of course, you can contact me through my LinkedIn or my email. So yeah, so that's all for my slides. And now I'm gonna proceed to the second part of this webinar, which is actually the breakout rooms. So to give you a few instructions before we open the room, so to make sure that everybody's aligned. So very soon a poll is gonna open to your screen and you have to select the room that you're actually the most interested to go. So you have to select between nature credit rooms and carbon credit rooms, but you don't select randomly, you have to select based on your first name initial. So for example, my name is Konstantinos, which means if I want to go to carbon credit rooms, I'm gonna go to the room number 5. So it's very important to have that in mind because we don't want everybody to join the same room because then it's going to be very hard to moderate. So then when you enter the room, there's going to be one moderator who is going to be giving you help in order how to proceed with the Miro board that we have created for you and how to proceed with the co-creational part. And then while these 25 minutes are done, we're going to come back to the main room and kind of like sum it up and wrap it up and say the main recommendations and the main things we have found through the breakout rooms. So if everybody's ready, then it's good time maybe to open the rooms.
Okay, so we're starting with the poll, so it's easier so people can see all the options. And then I will close the poll and put everyone in the room they selected.
I'm not sure if because I'm a host, but I cannot select the room. So
Yeah, me neither.
okay.
Sorry, I just noticed that I was muted. What I was saying that all the co-hosts, which are the moderators for the breakout rooms, they cannot select now during the poll, but they will be able to choose the breakout room when I open the breakout rooms.
Sorry, yeah, thank you.
Okay, I believe that now everyone that wanted to reply replied, so I will close the poll. Okay, the rooms are now open. Ina, I will move you to room 4, okay? If you're not able to.
I also see Tina.
I just sent Tina to a room.
Let
I
me try
believe,
to
I believe all
man-
moderators went to their rooms.
Okay.
I will pause recording now.
So I see all of you are coming back. Just give me 1 sec in order to synchronize my slides because I started from the start. So it's gonna take me some time until I go to the slide we were now. So sorry for that. It would be so much better if I could just type the number, but it's a good revised opportunity for everyone. I think it's going to take me way longer, so I prefer to just show you the screen from here. I think it's still visible for everyone. Then going by one. So thank you so much for the very insightful Miro board. I hope everybody had like a nice time co-creating and having some nice results. So now I would like to invite the moderators of each room to say a few words about what they found, what was the main key recommendations that people suggested. So I'm gonna start with Alberto. You can say, you can have like a minute and describe what happened in your room.
Yes, thanks, Constantino. So we're looking at nature credits, and in terms of the recommendations, both of the most voted went into the creation of standards. So on the one hand, the development of standardized monitoring, reporting, and verification methods, which will give credibility to the system, and the other one was about having a EU certificate, where basically the EU is the kind of formal certifier of the effectiveness of the credits. So these were clear messages that we got from the group.
Thank you so much. That has been very helpful. Definitely something for me also to consider for the study. So thank you. And then Maya, you can also say a few words.
Yes, so I think from our group, there was not enough time, I think, but there are a lot of strengths on the board, and then not so many threats. But I think the main threat that we saw was that it could provide, or it could be difficult to implement the credits to kind of gain economic benefit, and that could kind of threat the sector as a whole to stand on its own legs. And that was also one of the recommendations.
Interesting. So thank you so much. So Isabella, you can also say a few words about your room before we proceed to the carbon rooms.
Yeah, so we got some strength in biodiversity polls and also the nutrient removal, like habitat creation. Some of the weakness we saw is basically there is no methodology and it's a little bit hard to measure all this in, like, for example, small farms, also no regulation. So some guidelines for the farmers would be nice to have, and also combine this with other practices like fish farming. And some of the risk we saw is basically the lack of space and also the reliability on data, together with the social acceptance. Well, in the second part, as a key recommendation, we agree on the requirement of site-specific ecological baselines before any credit are issued, for example. Also prioritize biodiversity and habitat co-benefits to the nutrient uptake.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then Tina, you may also have something to say about the carbon room.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, we got a lot of different comments and opinions on the SWOT analysis. I would say it was quite balanced between like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So yeah, I can also agree the time was unfortunately a bit short. But in terms of recommendations, we have a very clear winner. So the most important one in our group was identified as to establish robust scientific measurements, reporting, and verification systems. And here we had a bit of an additional discussion too, as well, and we found that one important thing is maybe to not wait and until it's absolutely perfect, because yeah, then it will take very long. So rather get it started. But of course, well, it still needs to be like a robust system that we have. And also more important, it needs to be also consistent. So that's also something that was mentioned in our group. So yeah.
Thank you. And Ferdi?
Yeah, thank you. We had a lot of input from our group across all of the board. So around the strengths, I mean, these main that were identified of inclusion of macroalgae in carbon schemes were, I guess, around the broader benefits to ocean ecosystems and to algae farmers, for example, and the opportunities there around developing accessible and solid methodologies to actually make that into something real. The challenges, though, around the monitoring and calculation and the associated risk of a loss of trust of any non-robust credits which might be out there. In terms of the recommendations, I think these are very much linked to what had been identified in the SWOT table. So making sure that the methodologies are harmonized, they're open and free, and robust, and ensuring there's sufficient research to back them up, with a lot of standardization, and then working across disciplines as well, and making sure that the developments in the end don't lead to hype and then collapse, which would not be a good outcome, of course.
Yeah, thank you. And also in my room, it was a similar situation as Ferdis. We had like strengths and opportunities, the general ecosystem services and outcomes from algae that can be very important and maybe even creditable. And of course, as threats and weaknesses, something we've seen a lot in every room is the how to measure it, how to make sure that this is something long-term, the credibility of it, how the monitoring, verification, the reporting can also stand in a long term. And then when it comes to recommendation, we also had a very clear winner when it comes to start some RMV from case studies, which could be very important, and also to generate robust science evidence methodologies in order to underpin this with something very similar to what Tina said. And of course, to emphasize the carbon credit systems as wider benefits, not just only about carbon credits. So this is very important to have in mind. And then, yes, so thank you all of you, the moderators and everybody else in the co-creation part. I know we're running 5 minutes late. So now it's time to close this webinar. So thank you so much for being part of the webinar. In case you want to be in touch with us, you can do through these links. And you can also scan the code and be part of this conversation of EU4Algae. And it has been great opportunity sharing results. And again, thank you so much for the speakers for being part of this webinar. So thank you and have a great Friday.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.